Hey all, Carpetbagger here, coming to you live from Yorba Linda, California. More specifically, the Nixon Presidential Library. We're gonna head inside and check out some of the history on America's most controversial president. For now, follow me. The quote from Bob Dole. There's Nixon's tiny little airplane. Nixon's house, very nice place. He's even got some little surfer dudes there on the beach. This is really cool. You can actually sit in his chair. It's actually other museums, like the LBJ Museum, they didn't let you sit or walk into the White House replica. This is pretty neat. Oh look, he's got his drawer open.
Melania Trump, for the First Ladies, they have their staff. And then the West Wing is Chief of Staff, so John Kelly is trying to, work with the president, who's a unique president, who's over here, so he's got to kind of run down the hall sometimes, maybe.
Lincoln, it's a really long neck. It's like a giraffe Lincoln. And this handmade flag here was actually given to Nixon by a POW from Vietnam. Now here's some really cool artifacts. Got a moon rock, pretty cool. This is the first telephone that was ever used to speak to astronauts. So that's pretty insane. But I think most insane of all, space bacon. This is something I think a lot of people don't really realize or think about, is that Nixon was actually an environmentalist. He did a lot of things to support the environment. He created the Environmental Protection Agency. It's interesting, people like to, try to view everything as black and white, conservative or liberal, but even though he was a conservative president, he did care about the environment. Ooh, look at those First Lady shoes.
With long-term relationship with the United States.
It was a completely different kind of meeting, but obviously an historic one.
The ping pong paddles that Forrest Gump would use to help bring peace between America and China.
This film shows banquets, just like right now, big banquets, and they had these cigarettes in front of everybody. Each person had these cigarettes, maybe the Panda brand or something. And Chou En-lai was sitting next to Pat Nixon, and Chou En-lai spoke perfect English. And he looked at her looking at these cigarettes, and he said, "Would you like some?" And she said, "What, cigarettes?" And he said, "No, pandas." And 2 months later, the first pandas came to Washington, D.C. Zoo.
That's amazing.
That's how we got our pandas.
Wow, this is really interesting. Of course, President Nixon was the first president to record everything, which he did I guess for historic reasons, but it ended up not being the best for him. So every minute of Nixon's presidency recorded on this massive recording device. Well, I guess they forgot a few minutes in there. Check out this right here. This is crazy. This handgun right here was given to Nixon by Elvis Presley. And it's really kind of a bizarre story. Apparently Elvis was kind of out of his mind. He was going through rough times, and he had it in his head that he wanted to be a drug enforcement agent, and he asked the federal government if he could be deputized as a drug enforcement agent, and they said, no, that's weird. And he actually demanded to meet with Nixon, and Nixon was a fan of Elvis's music, so he invited Elvis. Elvis showed up at the White House with this gun, intended to give it to the president, and the president, Nixon, accepted the gun, and they actually ended up deputizing Elvis as a federal drug enforcement agent. I'd just like to give out some advice. Do not show up at the White House with the intention of giving a gun to the president. It would not go over well. Trust me. President Nixon, Elton John sunglasses, and bowling shoes, apparently. Looks like Nixon really crushed it in this election. Nixon won by 18 million votes. Gosh, it's amazing to think it was that popular. Apparently that's the biggest landslide in US history to this day. Uh-oh, this just took a dramatic turn. This is the Watergate lockpicks. That is amazing. And the walkie-talkie. Apparently this address book was accidentally left in the hotel with the burglar's home phone number on it. And here's actually a dollhouse replica of Nixon's birthplace. It's actually little tiny Richard there playing the piano. And out front, there's a goat eating laundry off the clothesline.
It was a little Cocker Spaniel dog in a crate that he sent all the way from Texas. Black and white, fine. And our little girl, Krista, the 6-year-old, named it Chuck.
When are they going to start putting roofs on these presidential cars? Nixon's top hat looks almost like a magician. This is his daughter Julie Nixon's toy bunny, and she actually apparently sang on TV when the family was saying, said, "Vote for Bunny" instead of "Vote for Nixon." Julie Eisenhower is her name. Oh, just lit up. Julie Eisenhower is her name now because she's actually married to Dwight Eisenhower's grandson. There's Nixon's smelly shoes. There's a horrifying Nixon shower head. Would you want President Nixon spewing water on you while you're naked? Here's the iconic yet disturbing mask of President Nixon. There's the Nixon head from Futurama. Oh wow, I was not expecting to see a piece of Will Russell here in the Nixon library. It's really interesting quote there. Interesting seeing someone take full responsibility for something. Look at that picture. Old Jimmy's the only one still hanging in there. Here's the graves of Pat Nixon and Richard Nixon is right there underground. Now the Nixon Library was actually built on the property of his family's old farm. Here is the farmhouse that he was born in.
Well, it's one of them. If you look real close in the corner, the blue one, I think, in the lower left-hand corner, if you zoom in there, right here, I think it has a 1835. Over here is where Frank Nixon, the father who came from Indiana, would talk with all of his boys. They had 5 boys. They all went through that chair. The president has something that needs to be used. He has a laminated card with codes that needs to be used to work with the computer and whatever else is in the football. You know what that's called? Okay, it's called the biscuit.
The biscuit.
So in the dark humor of the nuclear people, the biscuit is what the president has to use. So if you're concerned about the president, okay, they just have to worry about where the biscuit is. And apparently, good old President Clinton lost it for a week or two or something, but they found it eventually.
And this is Nixon's presidential helicopter. It's most famous for him flying away after resigning the presidency, where he stood at that door giving the double peace signs. You're not allowed to photo or video inside because it's still technically the property of the United States Marine Corps. And here's what Nixon would look like if he was made out of clumps of dirt or covered in scabs. All right, so I appreciate you guys joining me on our journey through the Nixon Presidential Library. Very cool. It's an interesting way it's set up. It's kind of interesting. They actually start with him being the president and then transition to him being a child and then his early political career. Interesting to do it that way, maybe just trying to end on a positive note. And anyway, I got some cool postcards in there. Let me show you these. I got this circular Nixon postcard. I got these postcard of Arnold Schwarzenegger with Richard Nixon and Bob Hope. And this is super cool. This is the Elvis and Nixon postcard with the original Elvis stamp on the back. Do you remember when there was the voting on whether or not they would put the young Elvis or the old Elvis on the stamp? Anyway, these will go out to Patreon donors of $10 or more. $5 donors will get a chance to receive these as well. So anyways, thank you for watching. If you want to check down in the description, I have an interactive map that'll show you all the locations I've been to. If you'd like to make suggestions on where else you would like to see me visit. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, as I said, donations on Patreon of at least $3 will get you some sort of postcard. There's other ways to support the channel as well, such as t-shirts down in the description. For now, this one's in the bag.